The worst mistake of Jake Mitchell's life didn't happen in a boardroom. It happened on a quiet country road when he chose to stop. The rain had just cleared, leaving the asphalt slick and shining like glass. Jake's phone buzzed again. Another missed call from his supervisor. He didn't need to answer to know what it meant. He was already late. Again, one more mark against his name. One more strike closer to losing everything. But then he saw her, a lone figure on the roadside, a black sedan, hood up, and a woman, very pregnant, standing there with one hand pressed to her lower back like she was holding herself together. Jake slowed instinctively, then cursed under his breath. He checked the clock on his dashboard. If he left now, maybe, just maybe, he could still make it. His daughter Emma's face flashed in his mind. 8 years old. Still sleeping when he'd left that morning. Still believing her dad could fix anything. Jake gripped the steering wheel. "Someone else will stop," he muttered. No cars passed. 30 seconds. A minute. The woman looked down the road, hope draining from her eyes. That was it. Jake pulled over. The moment his boots hit the wet gravel, the tension hit him full force. This wasn't just about being late. This was about rent, school lunches, keeping the lights on, being a single dad in a world that didn't wait for excuses. "I'm so sorry to bother you," the woman said quickly, her voice tight but polite. "My car just died. I think it's a battery." Jake popped the hood, hands already moving on instinct. Grease smeared his sleeves. His work pants, his only good pair, were ruined. The irony wasn't lost on him. As he tightened the loose terminal, his phone buzzed again. He ignored it. "There," he said, stepping back. "Try now." The engine roared to life. Relief flooded the woman's face. She exhaled shakily, one hand on her belly. "Thank you. Truly, I've been standing here almost an hour. Everyone just drove past." Jake wiped his hands on his pants and forced a tired smile. "Couldn't be me," he said. "My late wife, she'd never forgive me." Something shifted in the woman's expression when he said that. She studied him more closely now. Not just polite gratitude, curiosity, almost concern. "You're a good man," she said softly. Jake checked his watch again. Too late. He drove the rest of the way in silence, rehearsing explanations he knew wouldn't work. Traffic lights felt personal now. Every red light another nail. When he burst into the office, breathless and soaked with stress, his supervisor didn't even ask why. "You were due at 4:30, the man said flatly. "It's 5:12. Jake opened his mouth, closed it again. Somehow, the truth felt useless. "I'm sorry," he said. "I helped someone on the road." The supervisor sighed, already standing. "Jake, we talk about this. I have no choice." Just like that, it was over. Jake walked out carrying a cardboard box instead of a paycheck, his mind racing with one terrifying question. How do you explain to your child that doing the right thing just costs you everything? And that was only the beginning of what helping that woman would bring into his life. Jake thought losing his job was the price of doing the right thing. He had no idea the bill hadn't even arrived yet. The house felt quieter than usual that evening. Too quiet. Jake sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the termination letter like it might change if he looked long enough. The words blurred together. Policy, attendance, final decision. None of them mentioned character. None of them mentioned humanity. Emma's backpack rested against the wall. Pink zipper. One broken strap. He promised her a new one next month. Next month. The thought made his chest tighten. When Emma came home from school, Jake forced a smile so convincing it almost fooled himself. Almost. They ate dinner like normal. homework, a cartoon, a laugh he held on to a second longer than usual. But when she finally fell asleep, Jake sat on the edge of her bed and whispered an apology she'd never hear. "I'll fix this," he promised the dark. The next morning, Jake put on his only clean shirt and started the ritual of job applications. Warehouse work, delivery routes, night shifts, anything that would keep food on the table. Rejection emails came faster than responses. Some didn't even bother with that. By noon, his phone rang. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello." Jake Mitchell, a familiar female voice asked. His brow furrowed. "Yes." "This is Catherine, from yesterday, the roadside." Jake straightened instinctively. "Oh, hi. Is everything okay?" "Yes," she said quickly. "Very much so. I was hoping to thank you properly. I feel like a coffee doesn't quite cover what you did." Jake almost laughed. Coffee felt like a luxury now. "That's really kind, but you don't owe me anything." "I insist," she replied, calm but firm. "Besides, I'd like to talk." Something about her tone made him pause. "All right," he said slowly. "Sure." They met at a modest cafe near the industrial park. Catherine arrived alone, wearing a simple coat, no makeup, no jewelry. If you passed her on the street, you'd never look twice. She ordered tea. Jake ordered the cheapest thing on the menu. They talked about nothing at first. Weather, kids, life. Then Catherine asked a question Jake had been dreading. "So, did you make it to your meeting?" Jake didn't lie. "No, I got fired." Her cup froze halfway to her lips. "Because you helped me." He nodded. "I don't regret it," he added quickly. "Just figuring out what comes next." Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Too quiet. "That company," she said carefully. "Morrison Industries. How long were you there?" 5 years, Jake replied. "Never late before this month. My wife passed. Things got harder." Something flickered across Catherine's face. Guilt? Anger? Jake couldn't tell. "You know," she said softly, "most people talk about humanity like it's a concept, a nice idea. But when it costs them something, they usually walk away." Jake shrugged. "Guess I didn't." Catherine smiled, but there was weight behind it now. Purpose. "Jake," she said, leaning forward, "if someone had the power to change what happened to you yesterday, would you let them?" He laughed bitterly. "I'd ask why they waited." She reached into her purse, not for money, not for a card, but for her phone. She tapped once, then slid it across the table. On the screen was a corporate website, a familiar logo, Morrison Industries, and beneath it, a name. Catherine Morrison, founder and chairwoman. Jake's breath caught. His entire world tilted in one silent, terrifying second. And Catherine hadn't even told him why she was here yet. Jake thought the meeting was over. Catherine Morrison was just getting started. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too loud, too real. Jake stared at the phone like it might disappear if he blinked. Founder, chairwoman, the entire company. His company, the one that had just fired him without blinking. I don't understand," Jake said finally. "Why didn't you say something yesterday?" Catherine took a slow breath, one hand resting protectively on her belly. "Because I needed to know who you were before you knew who I was." Jake swallowed hard. "People treat you differently when power enters a room," she continued. "They perform. They calculate. Yesterday, you didn't hesitate. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't ask what I could give you. You just helped. She leaned back, eyes steady. That matters to me, especially now. Jake ran a hand through his hair, emotions colliding, anger, relief, disbelief. So, this was some kind of test. Her expression softened. No, humanity isn't a test. It's a choice. You paused without knowing there was anything to pass. There it was. The silence again. Heavy. Waiting. My board thinks I'm too emotional, Catherine said quietly. Too focused on people instead of profits. They don't like that I'm restructuring leadership after my father's death. They definitely don't like that I'm pregnant and still making decisions. Jake listened, unsure why she was telling him this. Yesterday, she went on, I saw dozens of cars pass me by. Executives, managers, people with important meetings. Her gaze locked onto his. And then there was you, a man with everything to lose, who still stopped. Jake's voice came out rough. I still got fired. Yes, she said, and that's exactly why I'm here. She reached into her purse again. This time, it was a folder. Jake Mitchell, Catherine said, sliding it across the table. I want you to come back to Morrison Industries, not as an employee. His heart pounded. Then as what? As Director of Community Operations, she replied, a new division. Your job will be simple. Make sure our company never punishes humanity again. You will report directly to me. Jake's hands trembled as he opened the folder. Salary, benefits, flexible hours, a child care allowance. I don't have a degree for this, he said quietly. Catherine smiled. I know. You have something rarer. Jake thought of Emma, the backpack, the promise he'd made in the dark. What about the supervisor who fired me? He asked. Catherine's smile faded, just slightly. He'll be attending mandatory leadership training. As a participant, Jake let out a shaky breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. 1 week later, Jake walked into Morrison Industries again. Same building, different weight on his shoulders. When he picked Emma up from school that afternoon, she ran into his arms. Did you fix it, Daddy? She asked. He knelt, eye level. Yeah, sweetheart, I did. That night, Catherine watched from her office window as employees left on time, as security helped a stranded intern with a flat tire. Small changes, real ones, because sometimes humanity doesn't just come back around. Sometimes it signs your paycheck,